Welcome to Inside Quest. We are the coach and hip-hop choreographer for your mind. Our goal is to bring on truly amazing people that can help you find your intellectual rhythm. And if you're looking to build your brain into a breakdancing beast of unshakable optimism, there's truly no better guest than the woman joining us today. She is a stunningly successful entrepreneur, writer, and philanthropist who has made a business out of helping people, which I think is really cool. She's a self-proclaimed multi-passionate entrepreneur who refuses to allow herself to be crammed into a tiny box of conformity, and she has blazed a glorious path to success that landed her on the 2014 Inc. list of the 500 fastest growing private companies in America. I know from experience that ain't easy. She did it all with moxie and a personal flair that led Oprah Winfrey to call her a thought leader for the next generation. She's written an international bestseller that's been translated into 16 different languages, and she's worked with such global luminaries as Sir Richard Branson and Tony Robbins, two of my personal heroes. Through her world-class online training programs and her insightful, brilliant, award-winning, and hilarious TV show, Marie TV, she has captured the attention of millions, and built an audience that spans a staggering 195 countries. I actually had to look up how many there were because that seemed like all of them, and it virtually is. This woman has done it all, everything from working the frenzied floor of the New York Stock Exchange and the well-heeled halls of Condé Nast to choreographing hip-hop on MTV and being one of Nike's first ever elite dancing athletes. And that breadth of experience really does give her content and training programs a super unique perspective that's really broad and makes it incredibly useful no matter who you are. She teaches people not only how to dream, which is important, but how to execute on those dreams, which is absolutely the critical thing. If you're going to be a dreamer, you've got to know how to execute, and she delivers that in spades. Quite simply, this woman is a powerhouse who gets things done without ever losing sight of who she really is. Please help me in welcoming the woman who grew her company by nearly 1,000% in just 3 years, the founder of Marie Forleo International, Marie Forleo. Hey, how you doing? Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
What an honor to have you on. Your system of being yourself and yet being so incredibly successful is amazing. Your content is really unlike anything that I've seen in the space. Your personality really shines through. It's so playful, it's so fun, and I think it's one of the things that so many people give up in trying to become successful is they try to play a role that they think they're meant to play.
Yes.
Can I kick us off with a quote from you?
Sure.
I love this quote. I think it's amazing, and I think it really gets the heart at what makes you so special. All right, outrageous success comes from thinking different, being different, and having the confidence to always do what feels right in your heart. How did you come to that definition of outrageous success?
I think from trying to do it all the ways that I thought I should. So when I first started out, I began my life coaching business when I was all of 23, which is an insane idea because, of course, the logical part of my brain said, who the heck is going to hire a 23-year-old life coach? You haven't even lived life yet. But I couldn't deny that something in my heart and in my soul said, this is your path. You have to go for this, even if it sounds nuts and it feels a little crazy. And so when I first started trying to build my coaching business, I had these ideas in my mind of what a businesswoman would sound like and look like and how she was to behave. And it involved a lot of big shoulder pad suits and having some fancy office and speaking in a very kind of professional and buttoned up way. And when I tried to live into that vision of who I thought a professional and successful businesswoman was going to be, I felt like a fraud. It didn't work. My creativity was completely stifled. I wasn't getting much traction. It was miserable. I wanted to cry. I wanted to stick forks in my eyes. It was horrible. It's drastic. And I realized, thankfully, pretty quickly, that if I just let myself be me, who is a girl from New Jersey who has quirky, weird tastes and a strange sense of humor and a particular way of expressing myself, if I just did that, everything else seemed to flow so much easier. And I've discovered at so many intervals throughout my career that that is the truth. When you're going into a negotiation and you're kind of supposed to play it cool and hold some things back, it was that's not who I am. I lay everything out on the table. Not expressing who I am, what I feel, not being blunt. I don't have an ability to do that. And it's never held me back. So I came to that idea and that philosophy through experience, and it seems to still be true today.
It's really cool. You talk a lot about how everybody has that inner voice, but you actually have to train yourself to listen to it.
Yes.
I think that's really, really shrewd of you to point out that you have to train yourself to listen to it, but I think a lot of people may not know how to do that training. What did it look like for you, and how do you advise people to listen to that?
I had a great gift. So my mom, from the time I was very little, taught me that I had this little voice inside that would always talk to me if I was able to listen to it.
She actually said words like that?
She said that.
Wow, that's cool.
My mom, she's amazing. So I grew up Catholic, even though I consider myself more spiritual than religious. She would talk to me and say, God is going to talk to you from the inside out, and you have to really pay attention. And if you hear this little small voice inside of you saying something, and it's saying either keep away, and I remember using it in the context of strangers, again, as a small kid. If
Sure.
you meet someone and something inside you says don't go near them or don't talk to them, really listen. But she started to expand that about, should I or shouldn't I take this art class? Should I or shouldn't I go in this party or this dance? And she's like, what does the little voice inside say? And so I had this training growing up about this little voice. So by the time that I was in college and getting out into my career, I was really attuned to what that thing was and paying attention to it. But as I've grown in my career, a lot of people are like, I don't know. I have these conflicting voices in my head, and one thing says one thing and one thing says the other.
Yeah.
And I think there are many, many different ways that you can train yourself to listen. One of the most effective is if you actually start looking back in your past and tracking. And if there were experiences or opportunities or forks in the road where you had an insight or you felt something and perhaps it wasn't logical, told you to say no to something that looked good on paper, or there was something that you really wanted to do but it was scary so you passed, and you look back and you say, God, I should have listened. And I believe in that way we can start to tease out what that little voice, that small inner voice is, and then as you're in the present and moving forward, you have a better ability to hear it and distinguish it. And then there's one other technique that always works for me, especially when you find yourself in the midst, and I think we all do, especially these days, of not knowing which decision to make, to say yes or to say no, to go for it or hold back. And oftentimes, our lives are made up in these decisions. Every single day, it's like it starts taking us on a different course. And one of the things that I often do is I ask myself, if I ask this question, do I want to do this? Should I do this? Is this a good idea for me to move ahead? And my instant body internal reaction is one of contraction. It's very subtle. This is not like my whole body is going to move back. But if there's something that is contracted and hesitating, or I can feel an energy shifting like, no, 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 I have to listen to that. On the other hand, if I ask myself that same question, and even if it's scary, even if I have no idea how I'm going to pull it off, even if it sounds insane, but there's something in my heart and in my body that feels expansive, feels excited, something even moves forward, for me, that is a really clear telltale sign to go ahead.
That's super self-aware, and something that I think is incredibly, incredibly important, and so few people do it. So I have a weird interview style, and my interview style is so similar to what you're saying, but now make it about your reaction to people instead of the reaction to yes, no, or which way do I go.
Yeah.
So somebody will come into my office. I don't read resumes, so a lot of times all I know about the person is what role they're there for and what their name is. That's it. That's the extent of my sort of pre-interview knowledge. And obviously it's important that other people make sure that they have the experience and all that, but by the time they get to me, I'm just going to assume that they can do the job. So now I want to find out, who are you? And over the years of doing this, I've interviewed so many people. It's well over 1,500 people at this point. I found that I just had a gut reaction in the first, what I'll call 7 seconds. In the first 7 seconds, I had a feeling. It may not have any words. I may not be able to tell you exactly what it is. And in my words, it's either a positive or negative, right? It's either expansion or contraction.
Yes.
And it really is visceral, so expansion and contraction is probably much more useful terminology. So I would get that where something would just feel off, or something would I feel literally drawn to this person. I want to get to know them better in that connection. Yeah. And so people were asking me, how do you hire? What's the process? And I said, keep a 7-second journal, because I'm always looking for, and this is what I find so interesting about your work, is you make it so practical and so you can actually do it, is keep a 7-second journal, right? Because you have to figure out if you're good or bad at assessing people, because you may not be good, right? At least not in the beginning.
Yeah.
Because you may not be able to interpret those signals correctly. So keep a 7-second journal. this person either made me expand or contract. And then how did that play out if you had the fortune to get to know that person for better or worse, right? So, and we've had the great fortune here of we've hired some of the people that made me contract, and we've not hired some of the people. So I've actually been able to watch like what percentage of people am I right? And obviously there's a lot more nuance than just expand and contract. And so you begin to like break those down into, okay, this feeling ended up with that kind of personality trait, this, that. That's, yeah, I'm really into that. Do you teach that in the B school?
It weaves its way into everything that I do. It winds up embedding in every piece of content that I teach, in every talk that I give, in every interview, because I find that, you know, strategies and tactics in terms of business building, they're a dime a dozen. You know, and a lot of people really don't have the underpinnings of success, more of the core fundamentals that can carry you through no matter what business you're building or what life challenge that you're trying to tackle or what you want to create at any stage in your life. And I think as we continue to move ahead in the future, the strategies and tactics are the easy part. And I know people are like, no, it's not. I'm like, you got to really slow down. If you don't know who you are, if you don't know how to make great decisions, if you don't know why you're building something or what your dream is as opposed to what anyone else's dream is, the strategies and tactics, they don't matter. They'll just get you confused and spinning and you'll be busy instead of being productive. So yes, it is in B School, it is in everything that I teach, and I think these are some of the kind of core life lessons. This is the reason that I wanted to become a life coach in the beginning, because I felt like as I was beginning to learn all of these great concepts and tools and strategies about how to live a truly fulfilling and rich life, I'm like, why did nobody teach me this in school? Like, why is this not a part of our educational system? And how can I take these amazing concepts and things that I am learning, that I am experiencing, and get them out into the world in a bigger way so that we can have a happier, more harmonious, more just world?
Can we dig into that question for a second? Because I actually think that's such a powerful question to ask. Why isn't this being taught? I have a theory.
Yeah, I want to hear yours.
Well, I want to hear yours first, and since they're all here to see you, why do you think?
You know, I think we are just kind of dealing with the barnacles of the past of our educational system. I just think it has been going and going and going, kind of like what we do sometimes in some of our businesses. We just bolt things on as we move into the future rather than really taking a look and saying, does this thing need to be completely destroyed and rebuilt from the ground up? And so, again, I just think, I think it happens in our companies. I think it happens in our lives and in our families where you're just going, and you're trying to keep up, but no one ever takes the time to really stop and say, is this still working? Is what we're doing relevant? Is the direction that we want to go in? I think, thankfully, there's a lot of education reform happening right now, and hopefully within the next 15 to 20 years, we'll see some major changes. I think technology is playing a huge part, but I think a lot of it is just because we don't have the will. So I think that's a piece of it.
Yeah, I think you're right on the money. So there's sadly, a lot of human tragedies, but there are two that have my complete attention. And the two that have my attention are the demise of the body and the demise of the mind. When I say demise of the body, I think we're just globally racing towards a pandemic of ill health, obesity, diabetes, cancer. I mean, all of what I will take a stance of and say are the diseases of Western diet. But then you also have the unfulfilled life, the life of that could have been something else if different choices have been made. Like what you just told me about your mom, that's so powerful and really goes to show like one seed planted at just the right time has really, obviously I don't know you well enough to know that this is true, but I'm guessing, based on your storytelling, has echoed through the rest of your life, right?
Completely.
And it's such a powerful way that you look at things, to really listen to that voice, to be in tune, to find that so few people do that, and they're so living in that weird space of worrying about the past, thinking about the future, totally unconfident in who they are, feeling like they should be someone else. So they just sort of live life by accident all the way to the finish line, which is sadly death, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, you made it, but you never stopped, got centered, listened to the voice, set a goal for what you want to accomplish, and then just set about becoming that person that can live that and having that kind of I want to say grand intention, but it may not be grand. It may be really simple. Like, I just want to be an awesome mom, right? Like, that's what I want to do. And that will be the thing. And this is something I want to talk to you about is lasting fulfillment. But that thing that's going to give them that lasting fulfillment that they never stop to tap into. That scares the shit out of me. And the reason it scares me so much is I spent so many years there. I spent so many years completely dissatisfied with who I was as a person, feeling like I could be more, I could do more. I referred to myself as the king of remedial jobs. I actually said that. And then once I realized, oh wait, my mind is the only thing holding me back, like if I have a different vision for my future, then I could actually make a different future come true. And obviously, what is the future to me today becomes right now, right? So, and then suddenly my life as it was began to fundamentally change. And once you're on the other side of that, then you, at least for me, and I really believe you, all you can think about is, hey guys, like this is what all you have to do, right? And you can have that thing.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. So I do think it's important, you know, for folks like us to be having this conversation, and many of the people listening. One of the things that's cool about the internet is you, I'm sure, have viewers in every part of the world. And I think it's important. One of my bones to pick with the personal development industry is, yes, it's important to understand the power of our minds, but I also think that we cannot dismiss how oppressive many of the laws and economy and inequality still is, especially as it relates to women. I mean, there are 62 million girls that are denied education every year, 39,000 child brides every single day. So girls getting married under the age of 18 every single day. And the fact that women still, and I cannot believe this is 2016, still earning, you know, 77 cents on the dollar compared to men, and that number goes down if you're Latina or African American. And so those things,
it gets worse.
It gets worse.
Right.
Those things are very real. And so part of the conversation for me, it's like, yes, how do we take folks who do have access to these kinds of ideas and changing our mind and taking care of our bodies? I think that's awesome. But I think we can't just do this for ourselves. We have to have a global perspective. We have to realize that it's not just about us, that there are over 7 billion people on the planet, and many of those billion don't even have an opportunity to lift themselves up, don't even have an opportunity to get education, to live a life that they want to live. And so I think it's important to include those issues as well, and to take a stand for them, and to not just be about like, I need to live my best life. Yeah, well, what about the rest of us? Because when you really start to drill out, and now we're going to get a little deep and spiritual, but
Please.
There is really, I believe, one of us, and you cannot just think about yourself and your immediate family, but you have to extend it out. And I think that's where the real fulfillment and the real drive and the real creativity and the real connection comes in.
So to that, because obviously when some people hear you say that there's only one, oh my God, it's so crazy, it's frou-frou. But don't they hope you're right? You know what I mean? Like, don't they hope you're right? Like, maybe even that idea, maybe it's not true. That almost doesn't matter, because we can act as if, right? We can act as if. And if when we're acting as if we are one, that there is at a minimum some interconnectedness, and that what I do to you matters, and that it has an echo to other people, which we all know, right? Like if I came in here and I was just a total ass and I was a jerk and I was mean, like it would change the vibe in the room instantly, right? Instantly. So we all get it. We all get that we can reverberate through to others, but for some reason, like when you put it in terms of there being this true interconnectedness, like whatever you do cannot help but have this knock-on effect. People get weird about it. But I want it to be true so badly, because I'm so drawn to connection, and my audience certainly has heard me tell that story so many times, but I'm so drawn to connection, like I really, really get into that. So going back to what your mother taught you and the two conflicting voices that people have, and I think we'll be able to bring this all back around to the interconnectedness. How do you help somebody who has two conflicting voices, both are equally valid, but they're paralyzed just with pure indecision?
Yeah, so one of my life mantras that saves my butt every single day of the week is this idea that clarity comes from engagement, not thought. So you can be, you know, sitting on your couch and wrestling with two options, you know, whether it's which business should I start? Should I stay in this relationship or not? Should I go back to school, or should I, you know, stay in this job? There's a million things that all of us kind of struggle with each and every day. And one of the things that's helped me, and I remember it was actually tied back to when I was considering whether or not to go for some type of career in dance. Now, I never had any formal dance training. My dance experience really was me moonwalking across my mom's linoleum floor in my white socks to like Michael Jackson. That's as far as the dance training I had. But I love to dance. And when I was starting my life coaching business at 23, one of the things that was awesome about that experience was getting a chance to really look at all my own beliefs and my own desires and what was in my own heart. And that's when I started to really identify that I didn't just want to be a coach, and I didn't want to just focus on one specific thing. And I loved spirituality, I loved business, I loved marketing, I loved personal development, but I also loved fitness and I also loved dance. And so I was having a hard time reconciling what to call myself, what to focus on. It was really a confusing time in my life, and it was really frustrating because I had a lot of drive and I wanted to help people and I wanted to make a difference, but I didn't and I couldn't figure out how I fit into society. So this idea of dance just didn't leave me alone. And I remember just saying to myself, like, if I don't actually go and take a class, like, how am I gonna know? And so I went and I took my first ever professional dance class at Broadway Dance Center. And getting into that class, I was terrified because, you know, in the dance world, unfortunately, if you're 25 years old, in the hip hop world, you're kind of over the hill, which is disgusting to say.
You were the old woman in the room.
And that's crazy. Like, that is insane to say. And it's
Right.
not true everywhere, but I remember going into that class and it was like the warm-up section, and I just sat down on this wooden floor and I moved myself in the back because I was terrified that I would make, you know, people trip or that people would laugh at me. And I just sat on the floor, and the music came on and I started crying because it felt so right. And I'm like, why have I tortured myself for like 3 years going like, could I dance? Should I dance? Should I try to dance? I mean, I tortured myself for years about that and was miserable. And so this idea, clarity comes from engagement, not thought. If you're wrestling with something, do anything you can to move towards the thing that you think you want. You know, if you're not sure if you should stay in a relationship, it's like, give that relationship everything you can. Go get some couples therapy, talk to somebody, say, I want to work on this. If it's a career that you might want to investigate or you might want to move towards, like, go take a class, intern, get yourself embedded in that field somehow to test it, because your body has a truth, it has a natural knowing that you can never access through your mind alone. And I think that once you engage with your body and you actually take action, there is this flood of intelligence that you have access to that you cannot get any other way.
That is incredible. I'm gonna remember that for a very long time. So I wear this shirt that just says do. That's it, one word, simple do, to remind myself that the only thing that matters in life is action. And that's me looking back on my life and saying, what were all the things that added up to where I'm at today? And it was always the times that I acted, I did something, I pushed forward, I got something across the finish line. I wasn't thinking about it because, oh God, we spend so much time like in our own heads. Like you talked about this on your show. It's like all the people that I meet, no matter how successful they are, they still all have that little voice that tells them they're not good enough, they're not smart enough, they're not whatever. And like, yes, right? Like, yes, that is so true. And if you can't still find a way to act, to move forward, to push forward, like, you just won't get what you want from your life, right? Like, going back to that concept of, don't they hope you're right? Like, don't they hope you're right? That hearing that, oh, clarity comes from engagement and not from thought. Like, the point here is for me to get up and act, is to do something, is to go test waters. And you very easily could have gone to that dance class, which I want to get more into that because I love that story so much you can't imagine. But you go to the dance class as the old woman in the back. The tears could have been, what the fuck am I doing, right?
Totally.
Like, for sure, that's how that story could have ended.
That actually would have been a win. That's
100%.
not a failure. That's a win.
100%. And that's what makes that such a great philosophy. It doesn't matter how that story plays out. It only matters at the end of that story, you got a visceral answer.
You got a visceral answer, and now you can stop torturing yourself and you can go in that other direction or the other thing that you want to do and feel more confidence and go for it. I mean, it works like magic every single time. And some of the best things that you can do is actually get that no. Like, if you think something is so great and so magical, but you actually take a step towards it and you get that body knowing or some kind of feedback like, oh, this is disgusting. I don't want to do this as a business. This is a hobby. Like, this should just stay fun. There's so many different ways, but to get that answer, you don't have to journal about it. You don't have to meditate on it for 4 weeks. Like, you'll know real fast.
Yeah, that's so powerful to get that answer. Do you know The Heart and the Fist by Eric Greitens?
No, I do not.
Amazing book. I love it so much. So he tells this really powerful story in the book about people who fail to make it through BUDS, which is the Navy SEAL training. It's considered the hardest training in the world, and if you get through it, like, you're a man's man, and it's like, the thing. And he said there's two kinds of people that fail. Those that own it, and they'll be honest. It wasn't for me. I wasn't able to get through. The training was too rigorous, too whatever. I realized in that moment, hey, clarity of vision, this is not what I want to do.
Yes.
And he said those people are not haunted by it. They tried it. It wasn't for them for whatever reason, and they move on with their lives. He said there are other people that they try to shuck and jive and get around just saying like, hey, look, I failed at it. I, for whatever reason, didn't want to do it. And he said it haunts them. They bring it up all the time. You can feel that sense of unease. And he's like, it follows them forever. To your point, what answer you get doesn't matter.
Right.
It's just being willing to roll up at that dance class and get the answer. And dude, it's brave. What you did is fundamentally brave at its absolute core. And you tell it with such fun energy. It's awesome. But I can imagine the truth of that moment was pretty, I've done things like that where you're the old guy, you're the one who's at a place, you cannot hope but to embarrass yourself, right? So in fact, I'm huge into video games. This t-shirt is a subtle nod to the gaming community. But I'm really bad. But really bad.
Yes.
And this one game in particular, you can't play by yourself. So you have to have a team. In my day-to-day life, we're on a world stage. And then I go into this game where they do not care who I am, and they are just handing me my ass routinely. But I loved it enough to show up and to put myself at risk. And I remember I had for real anxiety the first time I did it.
Yeah, I think it's important that we cultivate the traits of brave persistence in our lives and give ourselves a chance to be curious about things that interest us and go for them, whatever that looks like, in small ways and in big ways. I think all of us come here with so many gifts and talents and things that are buried and that we never give ourselves license to even inspect, nonetheless uncover or polish or get to this area where they're truly shining. And what it takes is that willingness to be silly and be goofy and probably make an ass out of yourself, which I do on a regular basis, but I wouldn't have it any other way.
So you ask an awesome question, at least in some of your talks, where
Yeah.
you say, are you here to be mediocre? And the answer obviously is no, and it gets a laugh. But your content is so good. How do you hold yourself to a standard truly of you don't deliver mediocrity? In fact, I'm gonna make a super bold claim.
Oh my gosh, I'm ready.
People need to go to your site. It's the best site I've seen in the space, bar none.
Thank you.
How do you hold yourself to that standard? Because it's amazing.
I just have a lot of fun doing what I'm doing. It's really hard. We've been doing our show now over 5 years, and it's people ask a lot of the same questions. So for me, it's how do we come up with fresh new ways to say them? But for me, when it comes to creativity and it comes to ideas, I use this one for money too. There's always more where that came from. So when I'm looking at anything that I'm creating, I'm would I enjoy this? Would this make sense to me? And sometimes I'll go back and look at the stuff that we've created. I'm I need that lesson again for myself. I need those reminders for myself. But I just really think about the person on the other side of the screen or in the audience. And I go through those same struggles as everyone watching. And I understand those dialogues that we have in our head that are cruel. And they're miserable. And so I just think through, okay, what are the things that I actually do that have made a difference? There's so much great information in this world, but I try and keep it extremely tactical and actionable. That's it. And we have really high standards, in what we do, and I just do my best.
It's really cool that you marry two somewhat disparate, but they make this beautiful combination of we have really high standards and we insist that we love what we do, right? And you guys say, what, if it's not fun, it doesn't get done?
Totally.
Which is great, and it drips out of the pores of your work that you guys are having a good time, and if you were putting out frivolous content, I think it would be almost tempting to dismiss you for over prioritizing the fun.
Yeah.
But the fun seems to feed better and better content, and that seems like an incredibly powerful lesson.
Yeah, it is. When we're creating our show, we laugh so much in the ridiculousness that happens, from the moment we all get on set until when we leave. It's nonstop. But I don't want to also paint this glossy picture because it's hard. and there's a lot of things, this running a company. It's not like you're skipping around, tossing daisies at everyone and having rainbows shooting out of your eyes every
only
5
do that
minutes,
on Tuesday,
right?
yeah.
It's, seriously, anything else, it would get addictive. But there's a lot of stuff that I do that feels grindy, but overall, is it fun? We all know that we're going to have days where it's just like you're grinding it out. You got to make it happen. I also think it's important too to recognize that you have control over how you approach and how you engage in anything. So things can be hard, but are you going to be miserable about it and like tighten up and get stressed? Or are you actually going to laugh at yourself and say, you know what? This can actually be a really good time. Let me put on some music, let me make a couple jokes, and let's get through it.
That's a great attitude. It's a great attitude, and look, anything starts at the top, it's going to trickle down. If you were moody, then I'm sure your staff would be moody, and you'd have a high turnover rate, I might add. But So here's one lesson I really want anybody watching the show to take away from her work, dig into her work, is you're weird. It is so funny and so uniquely you, and so something that one, you get to know you like so fast because you're totally unguarded.
Yes.
And yet your advice is real. And that is like the best stamp I can put on anything, right? Like you and I share an obsession with Tony Robbins.
Love Tony.
Now here's why I love Tony. It's real.
Yeah.
If you actually listen to what he's saying and you actually do what he advises, it will actually change your life.
And I think you can feel his heart. This is something that I really, really love about Tony. And there are many, many teachers, and I know everyone kind of has their own flavor, and that's awesome. But one of the reasons that I really admire Tony, and I always have, is anytime I have had the pleasure to be around him or just even interacting with his work, I feel the man's heart.
Yeah, for sure.
And I understand it's a business, and we all have businesses, and you get all that, but he's one person that I can feel his humanity at all times, and that's why I love him.
Yeah, it's interesting. So people ask us how my partners and I had such an overnight success, right? So it from the outside looks like we did have an overnight success, but it's one of those, it's an overnight success 12 years in the making, right? So what they don't see are we spent almost a decade just making every dumb decision that you could make, including, unlike you, who realized very quickly there was an image of a businesswoman in your head that did not make sense for who you are, I had an image of a businessman in my head that wouldn't go away, right? And so every day I showed up pretending to be that businessman, grinding it out, looking at a niche in the market, trying to be profitable, not thinking about my customer, merely thinking about the profits and how we make that work. And it was so at odds like with who I am and how much I like to connect and have fun and goof around, that finally I got to, like a drug addict, I hit rock bottom emotionally, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. And then this company ended up being a total reaction to that. So I learned all the lessons, and it just so happened, the reason that we're a quote unquote overnight success is because right at the moment we couldn't do it anymore, we couldn't think about money anymore. We just wanted to connect, we wanted to bring value, we were totally obsessed with that. We wanted to talk and like really engage in a community and hear that back. But we started talking about this in 2009. Social media no one was using it meaningfully in business in 2009. So it seemed like crazy. But then right as we start saying, we're gonna do this a different way, it's gonna be communication, it's gonna be connection, authenticity, I'm gonna be me, even if they think that's weird, boom, social media hits. And now all of a sudden, everything that I do gets picked up and magnified by people. And we just were lucky enough to realize that you're just giving people something to say. Mm-hmm. And they're the ones with the megaphone. They're the ones that have the global audience. What you have is the ability to connect, motivate, inspire, and deliver value. And if you do that, then they're gonna go off and say something. But if you give them reason to say something bad, they'll say that too.
Of course.
So you have to, whatever you're doing is going to be dangerous. So you might as well take the risk on the side of being really who I am, because it's sustainable. And I think you can feel that in your work, like just the knowing that it recharges you because you're having fun and you're being you and you're not afraid to grind it out, and that's actually one of the things that makes you so impressive. And look, you don't get to the Inc. 500 without some grinding and some real business acumen.
We grind a lot. But I think when we're evaluating whether or not to move ahead with a particular initiative or a product or to make some big change in the company, we really check ourselves. I mean, check yourself before you wreck yourself. Like if this doesn't feel good, if this doesn't sound exciting, and you know it's going to be a shit ton of work, everything is. I think people underestimate that. When you say yes to something, it's like, oh, it ain't going to be easy. There are so many different steps, especially, when I started my business, it's like back in the early 2000s, like That's crazy. This is when email marketing was completely revolutionary.
Wow.
A PDF or an ebook was like, what is that? Like, that's insane. And these days, I think one of the interesting challenges is social media and how many different platforms there are and how many different ways that you have an opportunity to share your message, to inspire people to market. So you got to get all these different spokes right.
Yeah.
I'm actually really grateful that I'm like an OG in terms of the internet because, you know, taking it back there, like I got to really hone my skills as a writer and as a copywriter and as a business person. And then so when everything started to balloon, I was like, okay, I get this. I have momentum. I can like put my fingers in a bunch of different things. But yeah, you do have to grind. Like it's not cute. And I think one of the things, you know, it's sometimes when I meet a lot of people here in LA, like on the streets, we just have a huge community out here, and there was like, oh my God, it's so fun to see. I'm like, yeah, I don't wear heels every day, and I don't get a blowout every single day. It's like most days of the week, I'm in the same sweatpants with my hair up in a bun, absolutely zero makeup, grinding this shit out because that's what it takes. If you want to be an entrepreneur, you're going to work like 2 to 3 times as hard that you would ever work at a job, especially for those first few years.
Please tell me somebody is gonna tweet out, "You have to grind and it ain't cute." Like that was hashtag respect. That was awesome. If my phone weren't shut off right now, I'd be tweeting it out. That was amazing. Let's talk about grinding because I'm in a cocoon of frustration right now.
Sure.
And my frustration is this: I actually want good things for other people.
Yes.
I am wired to enjoy connection, which is why I so hope you're right that we really all are interconnected. That really means something to me. And to me, the juice of life, the reason I do all of this, the reason that I'm doing Quest Nutrition, the reason I'm doing Inside Quest, is specifically for one moment. When you see that light switch on in somebody's eyes and you know that person's life will never be the same. I have the chills right now thinking about it. That person's life will never be the same for having encountered this place or me or whatever. That's why I do it. So I spent years chasing money. We got offered over $1 billion for the company. Could have taken it, but I wanted to be in a situation where I could see as many people as humanly possible have that moment where they wake up and I now know their life will never be the same. So getting into my cocoon of frustration came from how few people seem to want something for their life as badly as I want it for their life. And that drives me nuts. And it drives me nuts because I know if they were willing to grind it out, despite not being cute, if they were willing to grind it out, it would change everything.
Yeah.
Right? If they're willing to go to the dance class despite being afraid, if they're willing to write another draft because the last 17 were still mediocre, and to hold themselves to a standard, if they were willing to grind it out knowing they just need another skill. Like, some of the stuff that you've done from work with Richard Branson in South Africa, helping young entrepreneurs, I mean, talking to Tony Robbins about the money mastery, I mean, like, you span the gamut. But none of that happened by accident, right? They were skills that you acquired over time. So it's like, here they're looking at somebody who's having a great time, built an amazing business, spans like all of this different knowledge base, and is telling them point blank to their face, you need to grind.
Yeah.
And they're still not doing it.
Yeah.
Please help me. I want out of the cocoon of frustration.
Yes.
How do we help people empower themselves and realize it's just a necessary part?
Well, I think one of the keys is to recognize there's a few things that we can dive into here, and this is exciting for me. So, one, I think people have to want change themselves, really want it. So, you know, the people who are ready, who are probably going to be tuning into this show, the kind of people who would engage with you or with me or with your company, they're hungry, they're searching. But all you can do as a leader and a teacher is to be there, be very loving, be very compassionate, be very generous, but also know that people have to do it for themselves. And that you can be there and be their champion, but you can't want it more for them than they want it for themselves. We've done a tremendous amount of work to cultivate this and to put this community together. But I cannot beat myself up for folks who choose to do nothing. And so that, for me, is my approach. And I also like this other thing. This has been a really important kind of mantra for me. You know, sometimes when I'm thinking about what I should say yes to or what I should say no to when it comes to speaking engagements or things like that, it's like I really want to go where the people want me. I don't want to go where folks are like, what you got to say, honey? You know what I mean? Or like, prove it to me, or you really think you got something to offer? My life energy is so much better spent with folks who are ready and willing and want to take action. And for those other folks, you know, when they're ready, they'll find their teacher, whether it's me or, you know, the millions of others who are out there with great ideas to share. So if I were you, to get out of the frustration cocoon, I would completely release yourself from wanting it more for someone else than they want it for themselves. That energy match really has to be there. I have friends of mine who, they're not coaching clients per se, but I do what I do so naturally that I wind up saying, hey, you need help, let me help you. And my friends often come back like excelling at their homework and doing things beyond what I taught them to do. And I'm like, they want it. They really, really want it. And someone who doesn't want it, you can't make them want it.
Okay, that's so the right answer. And
you don't want to let it go.
Well, can I tell you why I need your help? There's one more thing you have to help me get over.
Please, of course.
So, and I'm being deadly serious despite my tongue-in-cheek delivery.
That's okay.
All right, one of my most honest goals, if I'm like really stripped down of everything.
Do it.
I want to end generational poverty. Now, the reason I care about that is, one, I used to Big Brother in the inner cities.
Yes.
So I spent 8.5 years with a kid who was an orphan, ends up being adopted by a mother who's incredibly abusive. So then he goes into the foster care system, and I mean, I was his, the person who saw him through the court system. Everything was crazy. And that really changed, it made it real for me, the people that are struggling, right? Mother Teresa, no one will act for the many, but you'll act for the one. For 8.5 years, like that was my life. Like I was inextricably tied to that. And when you spend that kind of time with somebody that you love, you begin to really ask like, hey, no bullshit, what is happening to this kid? Like, what's holding him back?
Yes.
What are the keys that he needs to be successful?
Absolutely.
And it obviously all comes down to mindset. Now, do you know Jeffrey Canada by any chance?
I do not.
Okay, you're gonna love this guy. You're gonna research him. He's a New Yorker.
Awesome.
And Jeffrey Canada, super bright guy. If I remember right, he grows up in Harlem. He gets a scholarship to Harvard. He goes to Harvard and he says, basically, I'm gonna learn this, education system. I'm gonna learn it from the inside. Then I'm gonna go back to the inner cities and I'm gonna revolutionize everything. And what he realized was that I'm making a very long and beautiful tale of humanity very short. And he realizes what I have to do is give up on adults. They're too far gone, right? He took your advice and he realized I can't want it more than they want it. So I'm gonna go for the kids. So what he did was he started a program where he brought mothers who were either about to get pregnant, meaning they wanted to have children, or they were actually pregnant. And that's how early he felt he had to catch the child. And because one of the things that he realizes, the number of words that you hear before the age of 3 or 5 has a massive impact on your ability to master language later in life.
Yes.
And then not only that, it's the number of positive words that you hear. And so he found in the inner cities, not only did they hear a lot fewer words than people in the middle class, but they were hearing a ratio of 70% negative words to 30% positive. And it was the exact opposite in suburbs. So it was 30% negative, 70% positive. So he really pinpointed that as far as correlation goes, the correlation was off the charts between kids who hear at least 70% and a huge volume of positive words by the time they're 5 or whatever.
Yep.
So I'm done with adults, I'm going straight to the kids, I'm gonna get them in this program, I'm gonna make sure they read to their kids every night, and that's it. Now, he's been doing this for a really long time, and we're still struggling. And the reason I think we're struggling, so I happen to have a ton of experience in diet. When you bring a kid with cancer into one of our programs, we know which kids are gonna succeed and which will fail. The ones that succeed are the ones where the entire family adopts that treatment diet. The ones that fail are the ones with the kids on the diet protocol and the parents are eating pizza over in the corner, right? That borders on torture, right? They're eating a bowl of ice cream. Hey, Jimmy, how you doing?
Yeah.
Right? And Jimmy's eating medical foods, essentially.
Yeah.
So if I'm ever going to actually make a meaningful impact on I'm being subtle for you. I'm gonna end generational poverty.
Yeah.
If I'm ever actually gonna pull this off, then I have to deal with the people who don't want change. I've got to find some way, because they will hamper the people who do.
Well, okay, I disagree. So
thank God,
yes.
Because I feel hopeless.
So we have done some work with Save the Children here in the US in terms of their early childhood education and early steps to childhood education. And we know from research that this is actually one of the most powerful, proven, research-backed ways to start to dismantle systemic poverty in this country and around the world. So I think, if we're talking about developing countries, there's a lot of different things. But if you're talking about here in the U.S., if I were you, and that was my mission, and I felt so strongly about that particular issue being no more, I would start to look at those organizations. It sounds like you have a great resource in the gentleman that you shared, but I know there are other organizations doing really great work about early childhood education, and there are millions of moms and dads who want that help. And I think if we focus our attention and our energy first on the people who need it and want it, and again, those are millions, we will get that awareness, those voices, and the momentum needed that the folks who are not interested at this point, it will shift culture. We will absolutely shift and change culture, just like what's happening now in terms of our understanding of what we should be eating and how we shouldn't have sugar. And I know there's obviously a lot of work to do there, but I'm talking specifically about your frustration. If I were you, I would go where there's attention, I would go where people are doing great work, and I would use your entrepreneurial skills to get them more funding, more marketing awareness, more people into those programs, because I think those entrepreneurial abilities are what's going to help these nonprofits do their work even better.
Word. Word. What is your definition of a life well lived?
For me, it's going to be multifaceted, but part of it is doing the work that you're born to do, making the difference that you feel that you were born to make, and having a great time doing it.
And what do you think about lasting fulfillment, what I call framework happiness, maybe not the greatest word, but that sense of true fulfillment that isn't so momentary?
Ironically, I actually think the only place you find it is in the moment. I think the only real secret to genuine joy and that feeling of satisfaction and connection that we all crave, the only place that can happen is in now. And the more that you can strengthen your in the moment muscles and like our ability to just be here, and then, if we're on a train or on a plane, just be there, or like waiting in some ridiculously long line in a grocery store, and to like really be there with those people and those humans and the beauty that surrounds us. For me, in my experience, that is the only access point to sustainable fulfillment, because I've had such incredible opportunities, like, being on Oprah and speaking on our stage, or being with some folks that we all admire, and being with people that my friends and my family. And I know that if I'm thinking about something else, or I'm talking to myself about something that happened in the past, it doesn't matter what's happening around me, I'm not there for it. And some of my most precious moments have nothing to do with achievement or these big highlights. Like, it's like this morning, sitting in bed with Josh, my man, and like sipping our bulletproof coffee and playing with our dog with a friggin' sock. It was like I could cry with how amazing that is for me. And it has nothing to do with what's in my bank account or like where I'm going or who I'm talking to, but the fact that I was actually there for it.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for being on the show today. That was incredible.
Thank you.
Guys, do yourself a favor. Find this woman online. She is a unique voice. It is not often that I really believe somebody has figured out a way to be a snowflake, to be so truly them, that it comes across in every bit of their content. She has cracked a nut that I, quite frankly, have not cracked. She's made utter transformation accessible. She's actually presenting content in an accessible fashion that only she could present, and that's what makes it so unique and special. There's not another human being that would create the content that she's creating, and in a way that is so focused on you and the people that want to pay attention, it will draw you in, and while it's drawing you in and entertaining the shit out of you, you won't even notice it happening, but she's going to change you. And it is change for the better. This is somebody who has clearly mined the most powerful minds that this world has to offer and synthesized their ideas in a totally unique way from a totally fresh perspective that is authentic in all caps. It is beautiful to see a human being who is so totally themselves that they can admit the stuff that scares them, they can admit the things that they think actually makes them less, all the while we feel like it made them more. It is It is human beauty. It is frailty and strength mixed together. It is something unlike anything you've ever seen before, and you won't believe me until you see it for yourself. So please, I'm begging you, go check it out. The best place to find her in my world is her website, but I will let you tell people where they should go.
Absolutely. It's marieforleo.com, and we have a really beautiful, it's completely free, it's an audio called How to Get Anything You Want. And if you want a little bit of me in your iPhone or just in your ear, kind of chirping along, making you laugh and helping you set those ideal visions and then staying in action to make them come to life, that'll help you do it.
Awesome. Marie, thank you so much for being on the show. Guys, until next week, be legendary, my friends. And hey, you can find me too at Tom Bilyeu. My name is spelled funny, so you're going to have to look it up down there. But don't come check me out until you've gone way deep in this woman's world. All right, guys, take care and thanks for joining us. Thank you so much.